Republican Daniel Cameron has been elected Kentucky Attorney General, becoming the first African-American in the state's history to win that office. He's also the first Republican elected to that office in more than 70 years. Cameron was right there beside the president at last night's MAGA rally.
I hope you can tell that Kentucky is Trump country. We are proud to stand with you on pro-life issues. Here in the Commonwealth, we are going to stand up for those who cannot speak for themselves.
And the AP says the governor's race still too close to call there in Kentucky, with incumbent GOP Governor Matt Bevin trailing Democratic Andy Beshear by thousands of votes. And Beshear already declaring victory. Bevin is not conceding tonight. We'll see what happens. Republicans do keep their hold on the governorship in Mississippi, with the Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves fending off a well-funded challenge from Democrat Jim Hood. Not a close finish there. Let's bring in the politics editor at the National Journal, Josh Krashauer, and former Ted Cruz campaign pollster Chris Wilson. Welcome to you both.
Good to be here, Shannon.
I want to remind folks, I want to put up this political cartoon that was out a few weeks ago about Daniel Cameron there in Kentucky. Again, the first African-American to win the AG's race in Kentucky. As you can see there, there's somebody who appears to be in a KKK hood labeled as Donald Trump, with Daniel Cameron sort of carrying his train here. I mean, Cameron embraced the attack on this, saying, listen, this is what the tolerant left-leaning newspaper thinks about black folks who dare to be Republican. I mean, Chris, tonight for him, the pushback worked.
It did. And I think, Daniel Cameron is the future of the Republican Party in Kentucky. It shows the trend of the direction Kentucky's going. Even though it looks like they lost the governor's race, they won every single other statewide race and swept them. Like Cameron won by double digits in every race. I mean, the closest one was Secretary of State, which was only 4 points, but the rest of them ran away. And Cameron he worked for Mitch McConnell, he was part of his staff, and he's really a McConnell protege. And so I think anybody who reads too much into the governor's race is really short-sighted in terms of their approach. And I would say Republicans did very well across the board in Kentucky, and they'll have almost every office in the state, again, outside of the governor's office.
Yeah, but Josh, not good news for them at the top. For now, we don't know. I mean, this thing is within thousands of votes. We'll see how it settles out. But in Virginia, I mean, the state house now, both the Senate and House there in Virginia, flipping to full-time blue. So that gives Democrats control of the entire Commonwealth of Virginia when it comes to the governing bodies.
Yeah, it's the first time in almost a generation that Democrats have been in full control of power in Virginia. And Virginia has a lot of suburban areas from Washington, D.C. to Richmond and the Tidewater. And these are areas that used to be Republican strongholds, or at least competitive areas for Republicans, and they're now blue. So, what we're seeing tonight is that a lot of the rural and small town parts of the country are remaining strongly Republican. Bevin did lose some of them in the Kentucky governor's race, but in Virginia, that trend still held. But the suburbs are looking a little bit tricky for Republicans, and they've lost a lot of ground in the last few years, and that's why Democrats, it's hard to believe Ralph Northam is the governor, and he's going to have a lot of power in the next year with a Democratic legislature in Virginia.
I mean, yeah, think about that. I mean, Chris, this was a man who was on the verge of resigning and packing up and leaving the governor's office after being caught up in a couple of blackface scandals, and his comments about what happens to the baby who's born alive as a result of an abortion that didn't work.
Right.
And you've got the lieutenant governor there who has been accused of rape by a couple of women. He says he denies all of that vehemently, and I think he's filed a defamation suit based on that. The attorney general there in Virginia also caught in his own blackface scandal, and yet Democrats ran the board in Virginia.
They did. It's interesting if you look at Virginia, and Josh is right. I mean, it is the first time in a generation, but Virginia has really trended against the party in the White House. Whenever Republicans took it over, whenever Bill Clinton was president, they lost a lot of seats whenever George W. Bush was president, and then they won and ran up the score a little bit whenever Obama was president. I mean, this is just something that we've seen in Virginia going back to the early 90s. You could even say the late 80s, whenever you kind of saw the party start to transition there. And so it'll be, I think, the next election in Virginia will be the one that kind of tells us whether or not this is a permanent trend or one in which is just a sort of reflection back and a rejection of the party that occupies the White House, which again has happened under the last 4 presidents.
Okay, I want to ask you both to reflect on what messages, if any, you can extrapolate from tonight's results into the 2020 election. Josh, I'll start with you.
Well, look, if you're a governor and you don't have the support of the Republican Party, they're not united behind you back home, you're not going to win an election whether President Trump shows up for you at the last minute or not. And look, I think the lesson for Governor Bevin, who's trailing right now, is that, look, you got to build allies to win even in a red state. And he had trouble doing so back home, and President Trump wasn't able to push him over the top. But I also think it's a warning for other Republicans on a ballot in 2020, because even though President Trump is very popular with the base, he may not have the coattails that some Republicans expect. It didn't work out for Bevin, and there are other Republicans in more competitive states that may have a little bit to be concerned about.
All right, Chris, quick final word from you. The DNC saying tonight that the victories in Virginia should send a chill down the spines of Donald Trump and every Republican.
You know, of course, the DNC is going to focus on Virginia. What they're not going to focus on is the fact that Colorado rejected a tax increase, the fact that Texas banned its state income tax forever. The secret for Republicans to win in 2020 in the suburbs is to take back the tax issue. And I think where they do that, you see them be successful. They flipped a state Senate seat in New Jersey. There's a lot of places, there's a lot of success stories for Republicans coming out. They have every attorney general's seat in the SEC, and they have a lot of success stories coming out of tonight. Virginia definitely is not one of them.
The SEC. We're going to talk college football next. All right, Chris and Josh, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Shannon.